Hey everybody, it's time for another gaming vlog. So for those of you who don't know, this is a little series that I started doing earlier this year where I just talk about the channel and what's going on with it and some other sort of gaming related topics. Uh, I really just throw some gameplay in the background usually to kind of give you guys something to look at. In this particular case, I'm going to focus on the city expansion for Talisman Digital Edition, which I've been playing quite a bit of lately. But I'm also going to be talking about some other games and some other gaming related topics while I show you this. And actually, what I've done here is I'm sitting at the end of a single player game that I had going. Some of you may have seen the epic 7-hour Twitch stream that I did of my first time playing through the city expansion in my first ever 6-player Talisman game, which of course, in addition to the new expansion, the new patch increases the number of possible players from 4 to 6. So I wanted to definitely take a look at that. And as you can see here, this game was pretty crazy. Got a lot of items in play, a lot of different characters in play, a lot of different stuff going on. But as you can see here, I'm kind of perched, just getting ready to go into the Crown of the Command and end this game. But I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to take a closer look at the city section of the board. I know I did some of this in the stream and in the introductory sort of video from that stream, but I thought it would be cool to just go through and look at each of the squares on the board individually as I talk and let you guys sort of get a closer look at that in case anybody missed any of the squares during the stream. So talking a little bit about the city expansion itself, I've played through about 6 games so far in the past week or so since it came out, and I have to say I really, really, really love the place where this game is in right now. Um, I've had very little in the way of technical issues or any kind of problems. You know, in a couple of the multiplayer games I played, there were some desync issues where people would get knocked out of the game occasionally, but they were always able to just rejoin without having to restart the game. I think we had one instance where I actually had to exit the game completely and restart the lobby, but for the most part, um, people, when problems did occur, and those problems were very infrequent, they were for the most part able to just rejoin the game midstream and just kind of pick up where we left off, and that was great. Um, I have also yet to find any really significant bugs or logical errors in the game. I talked during the stream a little bit about some things that I was questioning or some things that I maybe was a little unsure of in terms of whether the game was properly interpreting certain things. But I have to say, having played more of it, I feel like this is the most sort of technically sound version of Talisman that I've played so far. I really have not found any major bugs or behavioral problems with the basic gameplay mechanics. And I also have to say, I feel like for the most part, the AI is probably playing better in this game than it has in quite some time. Like, I feel like the AI is as good right now as it's ever been, and while I would say that there's probably still some room for improvement with the AI, I'm definitely very happy with the way it plays the game for the most part. Like, I don't really have any major complaints as far as that goes. Um, so obviously I would like to see them continue to work and strive to improve the game, in every way. That's obviously what you want out of any game that you enjoy, and especially a game that's still being developed, such as this one is. But I feel like for the most part, um, Talisman Digital Edition's in a really good place right now, and I would definitely highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't played it yet, or maybe somebody who played it previously and was dissatisfied with the state of the game and maybe was waiting for it to get a little further along in terms of bug fixes and content additions. I feel like this is a really great time to jump back into this game, especially with all of the new expansions that are available for it. I feel like it's in a really good place right now, and definitely enjoying playing it quite a bit. It's definitely kind of crept back up to the top of my rotation in terms of, when I'm struggling to think of a game to play or something that I can just jump in and have fun with. This is definitely right back up on the top of my list, and I'm happy to have that be the case because I've always really enjoyed this game ever since it came out last year. It's just I guess I would say it's a lot easier to recommend this game now than I think it's ever been, and that's definitely exciting. So on the other side of things, I guess I can talk a little bit about why I am not going to be playing Call of Duty Black Ops 3, uh, and that is basically due to the fact that um, it seems like the PC version is having a lot of issues, and I am just not in a state of mind right now where I'm interested in dropping $60 on a game that may or may not function properly on my machine. Um, I realize that it's not unusual for games to come out and have technical problems that oftentimes get fixed rather quickly. But I have to say I'm getting a little bit disturbed by this trend of late, and I think we've seen a lot of it over the past couple of years where a lot of AAA games come out and the assumption almost is that they're going to be buggy or that they're going to have major issues for the first couple of weeks that they're out, and then maybe or maybe not uh, those issues will get resolved in the form of patches. And I'm just getting really tired of half-finished games, or games that are not what I would consider complete or fully functional. I think there are circumstances that make more sense or make it more allowable or make it more acceptable for that to be the case. I think Talisman is a good example of a game where I was willing to give it a little bit more of a pass when it didn't function perfectly out of the gate because of my understanding of the size of the development team working on it and their experience level and things of that nature. But I think it's harder, the bigger ticket item the game is to overlook some of those issues. I mean, when you have something like a Call of Duty game that has obviously so much money and so many resources available to its development process, it's a little bit harder to overlook, technical issues or things that go wrong with it. And to be honest, the other big reason why I'm not playing Black Ops 3 is I was a big fan of Advanced Warfare and I really enjoyed that game quite a bit. But the problem with it was a lot of other people didn't, or they didn't have experiences similar to what I had with the game. And as a result, I bought that game and I bought the season pass for it and was really eager to play it, quite a bit. The problem being that for a good chunk of this past year, I've had a really difficult time finding games in matchmaking to get into. And because the game doesn't have just a straight up server browser, and you really have to completely rely on the skill-based matchmaking, I just was struggling to get into matches with people that I could actually play with. And it really kind of killed the sort of usefulness of the game for me. I found that it would take upwards of 30 minutes to an hour to find a match sometimes, and then even when I did find the match, it seemed like I was playing against people who were radically better than me, or just you know where the game wasn't competitive or didn't feel like it was a good experience as a general rule. Now if you rewind back to like say launch week or launch month for that game of last year, it was the opposite, right? Like I would jump into games and immediately get match made, and there were plenty of people to play with, and I felt like, you know, while I never felt like I was extremely good at that game, I felt like at least like I could compete with the people I was playing with, and there was always, full games to be found, and it was just a good fun time. I mean, there were certain modes, even during launch week, that were difficult to find games for. But for the most part, if you were playing TDM or Kill Confirmed or Domination or any of those more popular modes, it was real easy to find a game and have a lot of fun with it. But I would say by like the second or third month of that game being available, the that became really difficult, and I really struggled to get my money's worth out of Advanced Warfare, especially considering that I, purchased the season pass and everything, so basically spent upwards of $100 on that game. I think I have maybe 100 hours in it now, and that's including having played through the single player campaign. And so if you're looking at it as the typical like dollar per hour of entertainment ratio, I feel like I just barely got my money's worth out of it. And I'm a little bit scared to invest in Black Ops 3 because I'm kind of worried that a similar thing might happen with that game, especially with how rough the launch has been on PC. And I just don't want another situation where I have another $60 game that's sitting in my library being unplayed because there's nobody to play it with, or there are technical problems with it, or what have you. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting with Black Ops 3 at the moment. It's probably going to be one of those situations where I look at where the game is like 3 or 6 months from now, and kind of wait for the first sale to happen, and if people are still playing it, and the I can get it at a reasonable price, I might check it out. But I just feel like after getting burned so badly on Advanced Warfare last year, I just don't want to take that chance again, given all the other things I could be spending my time and money on, gaming wise. But that does lead me to games that I am excited for or am anticipating. And honestly, there's really not that much for the rest of this year. Um, for the most part, I was kind of hyped or excited for Rainbow Six Siege until I saw that they were selling it at $60, which I think is an obscene amount of money for what that game actually is. I think that game would do much better and be more reasonable, and feel like a good value at more like a $30 price point, given that it has effectively no single player content whatsoever, aside from bot matches, um, which, given my experience with Vermintide and bots over the past couple of weeks, I'm a little hesitant to think that that'll be a good experience. Not that there's any relation whatsoever between those games. I understand that, but just saying, like, until I see some evidence that the bots in uh, Rainbow Six are better than the bots in some other games that I've played recently, I'm not sure that I'm going to be willing to take that chance either. Uh, but I think ultimately, more so than anything else, it's the pricing on that game that really is, I find, off-putting. I think I think the realization that the gaming industry as a whole needs to come to at this point is that there are actually very few games that warrant a $60 price tag at this point. And if people are still developing games and budgeting their development in that way, I think they're in for a rude awakening, because there just aren't that many games from a scope and scale concept, or perspective, I guess I should say, that really warrant that price tag. I think we've had a few games this year that make sense as $60 titles. Things like The Witcher 3 or Metal Gear Solid 5, or hopefully Fallout 4 will also live up to that expectation. I think there are games that still warrant that kind of price tag, but for the most part, I think there's a lot of developers and publishers out there that are kind of trapped in the past and thinking that their games are worth more than they probably actually are to the average consumer. And I think everybody kind of has it in their head that, just because they throw a lot of money at a game, that game concept is actually worth charging that price for. And the reality is, I think in most cases, uh, a lot of AAA games just don't warrant that price tag anymore. The game mechanics are so simplistic or rehashed, or boiled down, that you as a consumer are just not going to get your money's worth out of most of these titles. And so, I mean, especially when you look at something like Talisman, right, that sells for $15 for the base game, and probably that much more for expansions that you might want to get, uh, and consider the amount of gameplay that you can get out of a game like this. It's kind of amazing, that you would even consider buying this game at that price point and get that much value out of it. Um, I'm kind of rambling, I know, at this point because I really didn't think this through completely when I started this topic, but I'm kind of realizing as I'm speaking about it that price sensitivity is becoming a real issue for me with games. Not necessarily that I have a problem with spending $60 for a game if I feel the game warrants it. I think more so that the issue that I have is the assumption that every new AAA game should cost $60 regardless of, the depth or longevity of the experience that it provides. And I think that's a bit of an issue. Like I don't think it's good enough to just say, oh, this game looks amazing, so therefore it should cost $60. I think there's more to it. Or really should be more to that equation. But yeah, so that's in a nutshell kind of my thoughts on what's going on with that. The only other thing that I'm kind of looking forward to at this point, release-wise, leading up to the end of the year, is the Wild Run expansion for the Crew. Those of you who follow me know that the Crew was basically my favorite game from last year, so I'm really looking forward to that graphics overhaul and all the expanded content for that game that should be dropping here within the next couple of weeks. Um, I know everybody's getting the graphics update, which is cool, so you don't even have to buy the expansion to get that part of it. But having played the beta of that a couple weeks ago, I'm actually pretty excited to jump in and play that game once it's released. I think it's actually going to be a really good time and kind of recapture some of the fun that I had with it last year after I kind of wrung it dry of the content that was there. So definitely looking forward to that. Beyond that, I really just don't have anything else on my radar for the rest of this year. I think I'm cautiously optimistic about Metal Gear Online being fun and exciting and interesting thing to play uh, come January when it's released on PC. From what I've seen of the footage of the console version that's already out, I think it looks compelling. And as someone who was a big fan of Metal Gear Online and Metal Gear Solid 4, I'm definitely really looking forward to playing it. And I think that a lot of the complaints that I've heard about that game from people who are playing it on console are a little bit misguided. I think that a lot of people just maybe didn't necessarily understand what they were going for, design-wise, in terms of how that game actually functions. And I feel like, MGO in MGS4 suffered from a similar problem where it was a little bit misunderstood, because that was definitely a game for me where once I took the time to understand it and really embrace the unique mechanics of the game, it was actually one of my favorite multiplayer games from that year that it came out. And I have sort of similar expectations for MGO, but we'll see how it looks on PC when that drops in January. But for the most part, I'm just spending most of my time enjoying the games that I already have that I enjoy, and obviously working on my own game, which I'll probably talk about that a little bit more after the new year. I'm kind of in a big push at the moment to get a build of the Nemesis effect ready for the end of the year because I'm going to be having a play testing party in December to kind of go over some features and functions and such, and kind of get some feedback on where the game is right now in the development process. Um, and there would definitely be another developer diary for that coming out early next year, if for no other reason, just to kind of bring everybody up to date on the state of the game and what's been going on with us getting up to speed on Unreal Engine 4 and all that sort of thing. So that definitely is something that will happen. I can't say specifically what the exact timing of that will be, but it will happen. Just because we've kind of let a little bit more time pass than I would have preferred between developer diaries, but I also feel like it was important, or it is important, for us to get to a certain point in the development process before we show the game again, because we don't really want people to think or to get the wrong impression about where we are in terms of development. And I know the thing with developer diaries is how the game looks factors heavily into how people perceive it, because the videos are such a visual thing. We want to make sure that when we show the game, it looks different enough and feels different enough visually, so that people can really appreciate how much has actually changed since the first developer diary. Um, Beyond that, though, I feel like that's about it for me for this year, content-wise. I probably will do some sort of video or some sort of stream, or maybe even both, for Wild Run when that drops on the 17th of November. But really, I'm just at this point trying to focus as much on development of my own game as possible. It's not that I'm not playing other games or I don't have thoughts or opinions about the other games that I'm playing, but it's just, as I get deeper into the development process, it just gets harder and harder to justify spending time talking about other people's games when I should just be working on my own. Uh, and that's kind of a point that I knew I was going to get to at some point. I'm sure those of you who've been following me for a while now realize that my output in terms of content creation has been all over the place. Like, I released, 3 or 4 videos over the past couple of weeks, and that was the first time I'd released anything in months. So just to kind of clarify or make it absolutely clear, like, when you don't see me putting out videos or blog posts or what have you, the reason that's happening is because I'm working, on my own game, and that's just kind of the way it is. There's only so much of me to go around, and more often than not, if the choice is between, creating this kind of content or talking about somebody else's game or working on my own, 99 times out of 100, I'm gonna choose to just do some work on my own project. So, but I think that's probably enough rambling for me. Sorry, this video is kind of all over the place, but it's just kind of indicative of the way things are at the moment. I am going to zoom in here and finish this game off, so you guys can see kind of the result of that, and then yeah, we'll just kind of let that speak for itself. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this weird little gaming vlog video. Apologize for it being a little unstructured and a little all over the place. Like I say, I'm just kind of trying to do what I can with the time I have available to me, and just let you guys know what's going on and kind of what the plans for the channel are. Uh, I'm going to try over the next couple of months to really think about what I might want to do differently on the channel, moving forward into the new year. I know a big kind of internal debate I've been having is the whole idea of doing content for games that I haven't spent a lot of time with versus what I typically do, which is play a game for a while, think about how I want to present the content, and then do it. Obviously, the problem with the latter is that's a lot more time consuming. Like when I did that Talisman stream the other day, it was literally the first time I had played the city expansion. I just turned the stream on and went with it. And the funny thing about that video is it's actually been one of my most viewed videos lately. Like when I took the first third of that stream and put it on the YouTube channel here, it actually got a ton of views. Mostly, I think, because it was one of the first videos to get published about the city expansion. The problem with that being, though, that because I had never played it before, I made lots of mistakes and I made lots of bad assumptions, and the gameplay wasn't necessarily up to my typical standards for content. But it really made me think about, what is better. Is it better to just play the game for the first time on stream or on video and kind of let you guys see me go through the process of learning the game, or is it better to take more time, learn the game, and then present a more structured, complete, professional, quote unquote, analysis of the game? And I don't necessarily think the channel has to be one way or the other, but I do think moving forward, it's going to be important for me to label those videos appropriately so that people understand what they're getting into. If I'm literally playing a game for the first time, I should set that expectation at the beginning of the video so people know what they're getting versus whether I just jump in and do things the way that I normally do. Because honestly, you'd probably be surprised to know this, but a lot of the videos on my channel, like, have taken multiple times longer than the video is to actually make. Even some of those stream playthroughs where it seems like I'm just turning the camera on and playing the game. That's a game that I've spent 5 or 10 hours learning how to play so that when I did stream it, I could be more effective at it and talk about it more intelligently and that sort of thing. And like I say, that's typically how I've done things in the past, but especially after seeing the reaction to that Talisman video the other day, it's got me really thinking that maybe that's not necessarily best for the channel, because if I get 10 times as many views by getting the content out faster, then that kind of seems like a no-brainer to me on some level. So I'm kind of struggling between, wanting to make the content as good as possible and the realization that getting the content out quickly actually is better just based on the way that YouTube kind of works. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys can let me know what you think about that. If you did make it this far into this rambling nonsense, uh, just let me know. Do you prefer it when I take the time to learn the game ahead of time before I show it? Or would you rather kind of learn the game with me and kind of see me go through it and figure everything out as I go? Um, and I think I'm just going to leave it at that. So, again, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this, and I'll see you later.